Welcome back to another episode. Now, I've told you guys before that I was really interested in doing some anime reviews, some old school anime reviews. But before I did that, I thought I'd look back on all the reasons that got me into anime in the first place. And I know there's a lot of people who actually watch this channel that probably are not into anime. And I understand that fully, but this episode might actually change your mind about anime, and I'm more of an old school anime fan. I know there's a lot of new school anime, I'm not totally up to date with all of it, but I wanted to go back to the past and look back at the early 70s, early 80s, and how I got into anime. Now, at the time I lived in England, and my parents would fly us over to Canada to visit family at the time. Where it was interesting, in England, I don't really remember seeing any anime, but the very first experience I ever had, I think I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I was at my uncle's place, and I was in the basement, and I looked up at the TV, and the very first thing that I saw was Star Blazers, Spaceship Yamato, for the Japanese watchers out there. And I remember I looked over the TV and something happened. There was like a moment when I looked over and I'm like, this isn't Bugs Bunny. This is really cool. And something happened there and I never forgot that moment. I didn't understand the show. I was still pretty young. I liked the animation. I thought it was very cool looking. And I knew it was from Japan at the time. Now, going back to England, the anime had started a little bit. A few shows had gotten out to England at that point. And one of the shows that I do remember is Battle of the Planets. Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, for any Japanese watcher out there or enthusiast of anime. And I saw that and I just thought it was amazing. I'd never seen a show like that at the time. You have to remember, this are the days of Spider-Man. The old Spider-Man. So to see like a science fiction show that was animated as well as it was back then, it blew my mind, absolutely. My family eventually moved to Canada, and I was able to see a few more anime-esque shows. A show that I remember none of you guys will remember. It was called Force 5, and it actually had basically 5 Japanese anime shows translated and hacked to slash all the, questionable material was edited out. And it was kind of dumbed down for American audiences, but we got Grandizer and Guy King and all that great stuff. I realized Vanguard Ace. I was introduced to the old mecha shows, robot shows from Japan, and I absolutely fell in love with this stuff. And the funny thing is, the other memory that I have is going to model stores back in the 80s. Now, it's funny, half the store would be like planes and trains and all that kinds of stuff. But usually there'd be a section for anime-esque stuff, anime models. And I didn't know, I just thought, oh, these are cool Japanese models. I didn't know that they originated from TV shows. So I started seeing like Valkyries from Macross and the SDF-1 from Macross and Votoms, some of the robots from that. And I didn't know what these things were. I didn't know what Macross was, but that was also going to change really soon. And the thing that made me anime fanatic, made me become a hardcore anime fanatic for years to come, happened in 1985. I woke up one morning, I checked my TV guide, that makes me seem old just to say that, to see what was on that morning, and at 11 o'clock in the morning was a show called Robotech. And man, I remember reading that, I was like, Robotech, what is this? Like, hey, it's a brand new show. I had all the Saturday morning cartoons memorized, what was going to be on, so when I saw a new listing, I was definitely in. And I sat and I actually hooked up, here we go again, my age, hooked up my beta recorder. And I taped the very first episode of Robotech. I still have the tape. And I watched this episode and I was completely blown away. I was completely blown away. When you think about the early 80s and animation on TV for kids, American animation, it was very, very young. It was meant for a young audience. And 1985, I was getting a little bit older. I was looking for more mature shows, and there was nothing really like that in animation. But Robotech was the first show that introduced me to mature storylines between the characters. Now, there was robots in the story. Absolutely, you have to have robots in the stories. But the characters actually, I became emotionally invested in the characters. And that was something that I had never done in an animated show before. I'd never gotten into the characters. The mecha and the robots became a backstory to the characters. The characters were at the forefront. And I tell you, like, what Robotech is, just so you understand, it was 3 Japanese shows. It was Macross, Super Dimensional Fortress Macross. It was Super Dimensions Cavalry Southern Cross, and Genesis Climber Mospeada. Harmony Gold was the company that brought them out. It brought 3 different shows from Japan, put them all together, and made them one show. I know, but it created a storyline that kind of ran all between them, and obviously dubbed them and edited it to make it all work. And there's been a lot of controversy over that over the years. A lot of people were upset about it and stuff like that. Where I was able to, years later, to watch each individual show on its own and appreciate that. But still, you got to give it to Harmony Gold. They brought these shows out here, and for an entire generation, you know, they changed so much by bringing this show out. Like Robotech really changed the way I looked at things. Robotech was amazing. It really was something else. And I watched. It was 86 episodes. I watched them all. Because it was on Saturdays. You get once a week, and then it was every morning at 7:30 in the morning. And you can get me out of bed nowadays. You know, I even have to get up at 8. But 7 o'clock, I'd be up and going, all right, Robotech serial. You know, and every morning I'd be watching the latest episode of Robotech. And I really got into that. It was just so absolutely amazing. So Robotech took over my entire life for a long period of time and made me become fanatical about this stuff. But there was something else that happened in 85. 85 was a very interesting year. I saw Warriors of the Wind, which was a dub of Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, and it was a very bad dub, but I was able to watch that on beta. Yes, I know. And my birthday, this was a huge one for me. On my birthday in 1985, it's kind of a funny memory. I remember my mother saying, "Oh, what do you want to do for your birthday?" And I was like, I don't really care. Like, I didn't really have any grand plans. I was a little kid. Anything would have been great. So my mom took me up to the local video store, and I was looking around for something for me. Finally, we didn't have to rent something for my family. I could rent something personally for me, which was a big deal then. And I looked around for ages, and I went to the kids section. Disappointed as usual Hanna-Barbera stuff, which is great stuff, but I wanted something a bit cooler for my birthday, right? And I looked, and I was looking around, and then all of a sudden, I saw this video cassette for Galaxy Express 999, and I looked at the cover, and there's this, I gotta find the cover for this. It was this weird alien character holding its face, and it was like cracking. And I was like, oh, that's kind of creepy. And I grabbed the cassette and I looked at it, and I read the back of it. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this. This is what I'm going to do. And it's so funny. Little did I know what I was getting into. That I got home, my mom rented it for me, and I went into the basement by myself. And I put in this cassette, and I sat there. And man, I was transported into a place watching Galaxy Express that is hard to describe now. It's something that maybe for my age, I really shouldn't have been watching, because it was very disturbing, a lot of the themes in it. It's now, for anybody who doesn't know, Galaxy Express is a wonderful, wonderful movie and manga and TV show out of Japan. And this was the theatrical movie of it, and it is just such a mature theme. It's about this young boy who is kind of trapped on Earth, and Earth, basically in the future, everybody's trying to become robots. Become mechanized machines and live forever. And he's just a boy on Earth, and his mother is killed by this famous mechanized person, Count Mecha. Anyways, what ends up happening is this kid is able to get a ticket on a legendary railway called Galaxy Express 999, and he's accompanied by this woman, Maytel, and they go on this fantastic adventure across the universe, and the weirdest things happen to them, the most haunting things happen to them. As a kid, I don't know, it was a little bit ahead of its time, but that's what made it so fucking cool, is that it was so mature. It was something that was ahead of its time for me, and that's what made it such a unique, amazing watch for myself. I was blown away, and at that point, and there's some horrible stuff that happens, and it's like his mom is killed, and oh man, it's really disturbing, some of the imagery on that. But some of the cooler things, that I was introduced to one of my all-time favorite anime characters ever, and that is Captain Harlock. Man, I tell you, Kabuki is my all-time favorite video game character, but Captain Harlock is by far the coolest anime character of all time. I just love that character. I love the Arcadia, his ship, all of that. Queen Esmeralda's. Great stuff from the late 70s Japan, and for me, watching that in 1985, it just blew my mind. And it was this story is just such an amazing story that you get to the end planet, and I won't say anything about that. I won't give any spoilers for Galaxy Express. Honestly, try to track it down, check it out, and you know what's something kind of cool I want to show you guys is that I actually have something from Galaxy Express, and this is very unique. I don't have a lot of cells, but I actually have this. This is really awesome. This is Maytel with the main character Tetsuro. And it's actually signed by the character designer right here. As I said, I don't have a lot of cells, but this anime really meant a lot to me back in 1985 as a kid, as a young kid growing up, and it had such a huge impact on me in so many different aspects of my life, in my creativity, in art, and all of that kinds of stuff. And I owe so much to Japanese animation, in a way, into anime. It just blew me away. Some of the themes and storylines that I was introduced to, I'd never seen over here in America. And that time in the late 70s, early 80s was a very magical time for anime. For anybody who's not interested, it really was there's so many movies and so many TV shows that really influenced American filmmakers and all of that. And anime is a really big thing, and it's very mainstream anime now, isn't it? Anime is like so mainstream, but back in the early 80s, it was a very magical time. It was very undiscovered. To discover anime, when I discovered Galaxy Express 999 or Warriors of the Wind or you know Battle of the Planets or anything, those are real gems to check out. And we didn't have Dragon Ball Z on TV back then and all the mainstream stuff now. So it was a very magical thing. I can't say enough about how cool the 80s were to discover anime and all that great stuff. And guys, in the future, I'm going to be visiting a lot of these early 80s animes, late 70s animes, early 80s animes, and checking them out and letting you experience them if you've never seen them as well, because it's something that I really think a lot of people should check out. So guys, I just wanted to show you and talk to you about a little bit of why I love anime and the early 80s animes and all that great stuff and what got me into anime. So anyways guys, until next time.